Last year, the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise turned 20 years old, and Sega wanted to celebrate in a big way. They released a third Mario and Sonic game, Jazzwares released a line of classic Sonic themed action figures, some nerd on the internet did a bunch of Sonic reviews, and everybody hated him for it because their nostalgia goggles are woven to their heads. Sega wanted this to be a momentous occasion, and the biggest and best thing they did to celebrate the Blue Blur was release a game called Sonic Generations for the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC platforms. Sonic Generations promised to be everything Sonic fans had ever wanted in a Sonic game. You can play as both modern and classic Sonic, and you get to explore stages based on the best stages from Sonic's history. It was like Sega remembered that their fan base existed and didn't want to screw with them anymore. But was it as good as Sega wanted it to be? I'd argue it was possibly even better, but let's take a look at the specifics. The story is barely there, and is basically just an excuse to get classic Sonic and modern Sonic on the same screen, which, as you all know, I'm totally okay with the story being simple. Sonic and his friends are celebrating his birthday when a giant steampunk version of the Phantom Blot shows up and takes them all away. This robot turns out to be the Time Eater, and is taking different parts of Sonic's past and erasing them from existence. It's up to Sonic and classic Sonic to travel to those various parts of their history and restore them to normal. They never quite explain what running past the goalpost does to make the stages restore, but hey, does it really matter when you get to play Chemical Plant Zone again? Along the way, the two run across all the other familiar Sonic characters, as well as classic Tails, who deduces that they're traveling through time and space and that they must defeat the Time Eater to save their history. It should come as no surprise as to who the real villain is, but in case you still haven't played the game, spoilers. It's Dr. Eggman. Two of them, in fact. So Sonic defeats the Eggmen and saves the world, past and present. The two part ways, Sonic lies to classic Sonic, and they finally get to have their birthday celebration. As I mentioned, the story is mostly just an excuse to get the modern and classic Sonics together, as well as an excuse for Sega to revisit these different worlds, and I'm okay with that because it's simple, it's effective, and it gives everybody what they want. Both Sonics represent a different part of the franchise's history, and as you'd expect, play very differently. Classic Sonic is my personal favorite. All of his stages are side-scrolling and play much like they would in Sonic 2 and 3. All you're given is a jump and a spin dash, and of course, your own speed. From there, it's clever platforming and rolling at the speed of sound. This is what Sonic the Hedgehog 4 wanted to be. This feels just like a classic Sonic game. The physics are perfect, the stage design is perfect, and everything just feels right. It's as if this style of gameplay never left in the first place. This is Sonic the Hedgehog 4. Sega wanted to capture the feeling of the classic games, and they did it perfectly with these sections. They're the standout portion of the game. That said, Modern Sonic is a lot of fun too. Modern Sonic plays much more like he did in Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Colors, which makes sense since it was the dominant playstyle at the time. The stages tend to start in a 3D perspective, but often switch to 2D, like in those other games. Sonic can boost, homing attack, and drift around corners just like he could before, but it feels a lot smoother than it did in those other games. Sonic Colors was fantastic, but this game seems like it ironed out all the little kinks that were still wrong with it. I can't really explain it, but it just feels better. Though sometimes you can go crashing into a wall and just bounce off and lose momentum, the modern sections might not be as fun as classic Sonic, but they're still great fun and never a drag to play. The stage design, however, is where this game really shines. Every single level in this game is a pure joy from beginning to end with both Sonics. They took the best stages of Sonic's past and made them even better. The game consists of 9 stages broken up into 3 eras: Classic, Dreamcast, and Modern. The Classic section consists of Green Hill Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, and Sky Sanctuary Zone, each one of which feels like a faithful recreation of the original, yet are completely new and unique stages. Sky Sanctuary Zone, for example, has several sections where the ground is just crumbling beneath your feet, and you have to outrun it to make it through. And a number of different areas where the only way to get to a higher path is to bounce on clouds. Even better still, playing these stages as Modern Sonic is a completely new experience because it's a whole new perspective. There's sections in Green Hill Zone where you're grinding on a rail and all of a sudden a giant metal fish starts attacking you. It's amazing. The best part about this game is that even though these are all stages you've been to before, they're all brand new. None of them play exactly the same as they did back in the original games. The Dreamcast era consists of Speed Highway, City Escape, and Seaside Hill. City Escape just happens to be my favorite stage in the whole game for both Sonics. It's awesome to play these stages on a side-scrolling perspective as classic Sonic, running on the tops of houses, being shot out of cannons in Seaside Hill, and even running on the inside of the building in Speed Highway. That's different. But the highlight of any of these stages is Modern Sonic's truck chase at the end of City Escape. It starts out just like the original, but it's quickly ramped up to 11, and you'll be freaking out the entire time. The modern era consists of Crisis City, Rooftop Run, and Planet Wisp. Crisis City, despite coming from the worst game in the series, is one of the best stages in the game. They took something horrible and turned it into something amazing. It's got a lot of great platforming elements for both Sonics, and a great evil little trick in Classic Sonic section I won't dare spoil for you. Rooftop Run is a lot of fun as both Sonics too. Classic Sonic actually has to use the hands of a giant clock tower Modern Sonic has to run to the top of to solve a puzzle. The stages are really good at making sure both Sonics see the same stage but in totally different perspectives, and because of the many branching paths, each time you play can be completely different. Planet Wisp, despite coming from the best game of the three, is actually my least favorite stage in the game. It's still good, but it's a lot more frustrating than those other stages. Each of the Sonics is given a different Wisp power they can use for the stage, but only in that stage, and all of the puzzles have to be solved using them. It's a fun idea, but in Colors you're given the Wisps from the beginning and have time to adapt to them. Here, you're given them at the last minute and just expected to know how to use them properly. And since Planet Wisp is the last stage, it's naturally the hardest. It took me over 10 minutes for each Sonic the first time I played the stage, but with some practice, I can do them in about 5 now. You just have to know which paths to take. It's still a great stage, but it's easily my least favorite in the whole game. In order to gain access to the boss room in each era, you have to do a number of challenges spread out around the hub world. Each of the stages has 6 for each Sonic, but you only have to do 3 in total to unlock the boss. These challenges range from beating a certain time in a stage, to rescuing Chao, to interacting with one of Sonic's many friends. A lot of these missions are really fun, and I enjoyed doing most of them, but some of them can be very tedious and feel more like padding than anything. There's one mission with Espio where you have to hit him with a light to get rid of his camouflage and attack him, which feels very cheap. Another where you have to keep homing attacking a music note back to Vector, which doesn't control as well as I think Sega thought it did. With the exception of the 3 you have to do to unlock each boss, all the missions are optional, so you can just ignore them if you feel like. But I think they're worth playing, just know there's a few duds scattered throughout. Each of the 3 eras also features 2 bosses, a rival battle and an end boss. This is where the game falters a bit. Not only are there too few bosses, none of them are exceptionally fun. Sure, it's cool to see Sonic and Shadow go at it again, and the fight with Perfect Chaos, though much less a boss fight and more a stage, is awesome, but none of them soar quite as high as the already amazing regular stages. I appreciate them switching the bosses up and making them completely different from their original forms, but none of them are particularly fun or memorable. That is, except the final boss, but he's only memorable because it's terrible! It took me so long to beat this guy. There's no clear pattern as to when and how you can attack him. I know you have to boost into his power core or whatever, but it never seems to happen. Just whenever the game feels like it. I swear it took me over an hour to beat this guy, and since it was for a Let's Play, I was in a call with at least 3 other people who had beaten him before, but couldn't give me advice on how to beat him because they have no idea either. The timing is way weird, and I'll never understand it. I've seen people online beat him in just a few minutes, and others upwards of 10. I think it's bad programming, and easily the worst part of an otherwise great game. On the technical side of things, this game is, how do I put this, amazing! The graphics are utterly gorgeous, some of the best I've ever seen in any video game. The colors are bright and vibrant, there's just so much detail put into every aspect. The blue sky and shimmering water in Green Hill Zone, the blocks and blocks of houses in City Escape, the Death Egg looming in the distance in Sky Sanctuary, everything about the way this game looks is phenomenal, and it's one of the prettiest games I've ever seen. Though sometimes there might be a bit too much going on in the background stages. I remember thinking Planet Wisp was a little too busy, and parts of Chemical Plant Zone are like that as well. It's not a flaw really, but they could have toned it down just a little bit. Some of us do have to pay attention to the game itself. On the audio side of things, this game may have the best soundtrack of any Sonic game. Each Sonic stage has a remix of the song you know and love from the current stage you're playing, and they're both unique and classic at the same time. Chemical Plant on Classic might seem like a very minor remix of the original, but play as modern and it's a whole new track with just hints of the original. City Escape on Classic features perhaps the best remix of the original you could ever hope to hear, and Rooftop Run on Modern is, in my opinion, the best track in the whole game. The Sonic series is no stranger to amazing music, and this game just goes to show that by compiling all of the franchise's best tracks and remixing them to ear orgasm levels of amazingness. There's even a remix of Supersonic Racing in here, and let me tell you, it's fantastic. As far as glitches go, this game isn't free from them, but you won't find them nearly as often as in past Sonic games. Sometimes things can slow down for just a second in classic stages, and minor glitches can happen throughout the game. There was one time I was playing Seaside Hill as Modern Sonic, and I actually got stuck in a platform with no way out. I don't know how I got there, but all I know is I tried forever to free myself, but it just wasn't happening. Funny I should run into the biggest glitch I found on the Heroes stage. It's as if the game knows. Beyond that, any other glitch I can recall was just a minor thing that didn't really hinder my gaming experience. They're there, but they're few and far between. Sonic Generations is one of the best games in the franchise, and honestly, if it wasn't for Ghost Trick and The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword coming out in the same year, it would have been my game of the year for 2011. It's that good. The stages are familiar yet unique, the story is cheesy but enjoyable, the graphics are beautiful, the music is amazing, it's a giant love letter to both the franchise and the fans, and they nailed it fantastically. If it wasn't for the boss battles being a drag, this would be a perfect game. It's easily one of my favorites in the series, and it was the best possible way to celebrate Sonic's 20th and his long, complicated history. Almost makes you completely forget the years between Adventure 2 and Unleashed. Almost.